Welcome back, guys, to the Coin Vigilante podcast. Guys, today I'm extremely excited to announce the new sponsor of the Coin Vigilante podcast. Huge shout out to GetHedge and their team. GetHedge is the easiest way for everyone out there, employee or employer, to convert a specific portion of your paycheck directly into Bitcoin, Litecoin, or Ethereum. That's right. It is the easiest way, the most automated way. All you got to do is sign up with 4 easy steps at gethedge.io with the link I'm going to provide in the bio and description below. So, guys, we are full supporters of people who spread the adoption of Bitcoin, Litecoin, sound money. And so, GetHedge is exactly what allows this to happen. So, again, all you got to do is select a specific percentage out of every paycheck that you get to be put into sound money, and then you don't have to think about it. So, guys, we're full supporters of that. I really want to give them a big shout out. Guys, thanks for making this episode possible. And again, welcome to the podcast. See you soon. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Coin Vigilante podcast. Today we have a new guest, one that we've never had on the show. We have RiceTVx. All right, guys. So he's a cool guy that I've met on Twitter and at meetups, and he is a content creator, has his own YouTube channel with about 27,000 subscribers, puts out a lot of content, interviews people, from all across the spectrum that bring a ton of knowledge. So dude, I'm interested to have you on the show, talk about things that, you could bring a lot of knowledge to. So without further ado, RiceTVx, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for the invitation, man. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. And for people who are unfamiliar, depending on when you're going to be releasing this, I did release an interview with you today, the time that we were recording this interview on the 16th of April, the day before Easter. So I definitely encourage people if they have not seen that conversation between me and you on my channel, to make sure they're checking that one out.
Yeah, that was a blast. It was a good conversation, and I do appreciate you having me on your show. So now I have you on my show. So let's for people that don't know you, and I'll give you a spotlight where I show your YouTube channel and everything. So you have a YouTube channel. I'll actually just show it right here. So it's RiceTVx. Rice Report, and then you are interviewing people from all over the place. I mean, people that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, I don't know if you're with BitBoy as well, and I've seen you around. So, this is your channel, guys, that you guys can follow. A lot of good content out there, so make sure you follow him. What's your story behind your channel? How, when did you start? What do you gear your channel towards? Are you into crypto and all this kind of stuff? Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and rewind a little bit, because a lot of people are familiar with me from my former brand name. When I first started my channel back in January of 2018 is when I put my first videos out. At that time, I was going under the brand name of Rice Crypto, and the channel was very focused on cryptocurrency, economics, politics would come into play, and I would teach people about what voluntarism is and what anarchy is. The true definition of these words. Now, I've gotten away from labels since then, and I've also restructured my channel and rebranded. A lot of people still know me as Rice Crypto, and I've maintained keeping the Rice Crypto brand within the RiceTVx channel. So I have 3 different shows under the one channel. The Rice Crypto show covers crypto and blockchain, and then the Rice Report covers economics and politics. And there's a little bit of bleed over in some of that, but I try to keep the episodes separate by the nature of what we're talking about in the conversations. And then the third show, which was really what helped me to expand my channel out, was Stranger Than Fiction, where I'm covering fringe topics, conspiracies, studying law, looking into history, because a lot of history has been hidden, spirituality, and all of this kind of goes under the umbrella of freedom and sovereignty for me. Cryptocurrency gives us that. If you're investing right, it gives you that financial freedom. It
Hmm.
has that power, financial sovereignty, but that doesn't give you real true sovereignty. So those are some of the things that I've been exploring on my channel. I've been very fortunate and blessed to be able to interview a lot of different people. I was able to interview John McAfee more times than anybody else before he passed on. Title that I'll get to keep, unfortunately, at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm actually coaching and training Janice on some interviews because she's going to be coming out publicly, his wife. So that should be coming out hopefully within the
Wow.
next month or so. In addition to that, yeah, I work because I've been in the space for quite some time. I came up with my channel with a lot of other channels. Ken Bozak is who kind of gave me my start on, my first interview, and that's what kickstarted me to actually produce videos because I was procrastinating.
Hmm.
And then me and Ken started doing a show. I started meeting people like Bitcoin Ben Simchi. Me and him have collaborated over the
Yeah.
years. We've become good friends. So a lot of the people that you've had on your show, we have been on my show. It's just we've been in the same circle. We just hadn't had the chance to really truly meet
Yeah.
until we met in St. Petersburg at one of Litecoin Lisa's meetups. And Lisa's been on the show. She's a good friend of both of ours. So the circles kind of run parallel in that aspect. Now, with the BitBoy thing, I've been very fortunate that because of what I stand for in crypto, it's a little edgy, a little controversial. Some people don't like to bring me on their channels. I know how to dial it back so I'm not affecting other people's
Yeah.
channels, but he gives me an opportunity weekly to come on Around the Blockchain, which is a show that he does Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time, where he brings on different content creators, whether on YouTube, maybe TikTokers, whatever the case might be. And it's 4 different guests with a host, and we go around talking about different topics that have to do with news in the cryptocurrency space that's pretty
Yeah.
relevant to the day. Um, so that's been very, very helpful with me being able to grow my channel. Also, BitBoy is sponsoring RiceTVx through BitLab Academies. It was BitSwapDex. So he's a supporter of the channel and brings me on Around the Blockchain, which helps me to expand my horizons. Because Carlos, what's really crazy is when I first started my channel,
Hmm.
and I don't get to explain this often, so I apologize if I'm rambling. When I first started my channel, I was just dealing with so much censorship and shadow banning because of a lot of the people that I've interviewed. And the
Yeah.
cryptocurrency space really wasn't showing me the what I felt like just the respect for what I was doing in crypto. My channel was not growing. So by the beginning of 2020, I would say I might have been around 3,000 subscribers. It was March of 2020 when I started restructuring my channel, and then later in the year rebranding, that my channel started growing. And for me to get to 27,000 subscribers, kind of halfway to the 28K, is like me hitting 1 million subscribers because of the
Yeah.
battle I got to deal with. But then I get the fortunateness of being able to work with peers who have bigger channels who bring me on their channel and give me an opportunity to grow and expand my audience by putting me in front of their audience. And that was one of the things that I wanted to do with you as well, because
Hmm.
as many
Yeah.
people have helped me out, it's the only thing I can do is give back to quality content creators. And I feel like
Yeah.
what you're doing here at Coin Vigilante is definitely has a lot of value. And I do want to apologize to you because I was going back and listening to the edit, and I did say crypto vigilante, and you thought I didn't, and I had to go back and add a little correction there. I would have started it over. I sincerely apologize about that.
Nah, dude, ever since you mentioned that, I didn't realize there were so many like whatever vigilantes out there on Twitter, YouTube. I was like, whoa, I gotta really, make sure that we have this trademark, which we do and everything. So, because
Well, I mean, obviously, you have Jeff Berwick with the Dollar Vigilante who came first, and a lot of people started
yeah,
using a little bit of stuff from that. And then the Coin Vigilante is from Jeff Berwick, is just an extension off more crypto focused.
okay,
So, though aside from those two, those are the only vigilantes I really pay attention to aside from now Coin Vigilante. But I just wanted to say something because I felt bad because when I was doing the interview, I was like, somewhere in my head, I'm like, I did not say Coin Vigilante correctly. And I was saying something to you in the interview. And you're like, no,
yeah,
no, 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 you said it
that's
right.
fine. Nah, it's all good, man. But It's kind of, I know you were saying, you might be rambling about content creation and your YouTube channel, but I do this too. I've had, I haven't moved much either. I've had about the same number of subscribers, which I really need to think of how I need to grow it. Because, for example, I watch your stuff, like, exactly when to say what at each segment, how to like shill your own campaign or make it grow, right? So that's one of the things that, even right now in this podcast episode, a lot of people listening want to become content creators in the future, or they want to see, maybe they get some inspiration behind what you've done, so your experience is useful,
I
you
appreciate you
ranting
saying
about it
that.
or explaining it is useful to me, to the audience. So, and that's one of the things that, we all kind of try to grow on. And but we can talk about that more, but I want to bring your wealth of knowledge that you're bringing to the table today. So one of the things that I want you to discuss a little bit, if we can, is the government has been taken away purchasing power out of, majority of the time it's out of the bottom 50% of Americans or people around the world, right? Ever since they removed the gold standard, they've been printing trillions out of thin air. Talk a little bit about what are your thoughts of that transition? So we had, we were pegged to gold, and in a way that kind of held our purchasing power together. Ever since they did that, number one, I've always been curious: did they remove it from the gold standard so that we can fund war, so that we would be able to print trillions out of thin air to just benefit that, or I don't know? I mean, is there any ideas you got towards that?
Yeah, so let's rewind back to like 1913. And you can say it's the government's fault, and people can say that the Federal Reserve is a part of the government, but it is a private banking group. So it's not technically the government. They were, in a sense, contracted to create the money supply for the government.
Hmm.
So the Federal Reserve is our central bank here in the United States. It got in power in 1913. There's a lot of history that goes to the creation of the Federal Reserve, which some people can look at as being the second, or excuse me, the third or the fourth attempt at central banking. Some people call
Yeah.
it the third, in the United States specifically. So with that being said, it's stuck around this entire time. It's been in power of our money supply of the U.S. dollar, and ever since 1913, we've been losing purchasing power, even when the money was backed by gold. It was
Hmm.
still continuously losing purchasing power because it wasn't 100% backed, it wasn't audited like it should have been. So they were putting out more money than we had gold. And what started happening is we got involved in world wars, and then towards the end of World War II, we became the kind of superpower financially in the world. And there was a Bretton Woods agreement that took place. It was the 40s or 50s. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. And that's where the US dollar became the world reserve currency,
Hmm.
meaning that all other currencies were judged by the US dollar. And in addition to that, that just kind of gave the United States a lot of, the best way to say it is Americans are very spoiled because of that fact, because other nations were dealing with a lot of issues when it came to their money supply. But
Oh
because of
yeah.
the world reserve currency issue, but also in the 1930s, we experienced the Depression. So fast forward to 1971, when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. They call it the Nixon shock. And a lot of what was going on was countries were trying to they knew what was happening with the monetary policy. They knew exactly what was going on in other nations, and they wanted to retrieve some of their gold, if not all their gold supply. I believe it was France that even sent battleships to New York City to collect gold that they ultimately left empty-handed with. I
Wow.
mean, so it's pretty interesting when you start looking at the central bank cartels. But this system is all based on debt, and it's designed. The dollar is designed under the Federal Reserve to lose purchasing power
Hmm.
on purpose, where people don't notice. We
Yeah.
have this um, inflation, which averages about 2% a year. But that is another form of taxation. It's a hidden taxation, and it's taking away your purchasing power year by year. And 2008, we've seen a crash of the system. They put it on life support when it all should have been, it all should have crashed and not artificially inflated Had we let it crash, it would have sucked, but it would have been an easier situation to get through. But
Hmm.
when you're artificially pumping up a system, and it's already at its end, then the recovery is going to be that much harder because of the artificial inflation that's going on. And what I mean by that is, so in 2008, we did quantitative easing 1, 2, and 3, and that helped us to get out of the situation that we were experiencing because of the crash. And then we fast forward to 2019, we had the inverted yield curve pointing towards a recession. We started having problems in the repo markets. Then conveniently, we had the pandemic issue.
Hmm.
And then in March of 2020, the system pretty much crashed again. They had to stop trading. They had to halt trading on the stock markets to prevent the system from crashing. And then between that time period and 2022, we've printed up, now not physically printed up, but we've put into existence more than 25% of the money supply that we have in total in the past 2 years. And that's why we're seeing higher forms of inflation. So now that hidden tax is just getting worse and more apparent.
Yeah.
The CPI data that just recently came out said like 8.5%, but a lot of people are pointing more towards like 15, 16%. The numbers are really off. And
Yeah.
it also depends on which sector you're looking at too. So we've come to the end of this fiat cycle, which is the reason why I got involved in cryptocurrency. I saw these
Hmm.
technologies as a way for us to get away from central bank and government control and manipulation of the money supply. And for those who are like, well, Bitcoin is not backed by anything. I mean, it has a fiat aspect to it, certainly, but it's backed by energy of the mining, and it's also not something that can be manipulated and printed upon. You
Yeah.
can't create more Bitcoin. So if I had to put value in something that didn't intrinsically have real value, I would much rather do that on something that cannot be manipulated than something that can continually be manipulated and devalued. And we're also really early in the game of cryptocurrency and this technology of blockchain. There's going to be so many more advancements. The technology is going to happen from younger people that might be inspired by people like me and you, people like Bitcoin Ben, Lisa, people like Satoshi Nakamoto. I mean, the future is bright, and I've just seen so many advances in technology take place that we're definitely early. But the central banks have come, this fiat system has come to the cycle has come to an end, and that's what we're witnessing right now.
That's crazy. Well, that's a good walkthrough of like kind of like the history of how everything started and the point to where we're at right now. And it basically seems like, but when you're talking about, we should have let the system crash, everything reset completely. What it is essentially happening is we're giving a drug addict just more drugs until, the person dies or something. So right now we have like this balloon that just keeps inflating, inflating, inflating. And the only way to keep the economy going and everything alive is by just simply doing the same thing that we've been doing, printing.
But but
But
that that's gonna cause high, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is really important because that will cause what people talk about hyperinflation. And then you can look at situations like Zimbabwe and Venezuela. And that recent interview I did with Lynette Zhang, people should check out because she's
Mhm.
talking about a hyperinflationary depression taking place. And it's not a scary, it's not a very pretty scenario. It's a very
No.
scary one, in fact.
But see, people don't realize this, especially in the US, because like you said, we've been spoiled. And the reason is because we have the world reserve currency. If you look at Latin America, if you look at African countries, they have experienced what hyperinflation is on a economic downturn, right? So, you know, what is it about? Is it just too much government over dependency that we have in the US? And I might be talking a lot of trash about Americans, which is, I'm American, whatever, but I mean, I'll tell you the truth. I've talked to people weeks ago that still think that the US dollar is backed by gold. I
Yeah.
mean, it just blows my mind, right? And so there is an enormous financial illiteracy going on that people don't realize. And it's the same reason why the government gets away with it, why the Fed gets away with it, because they have been doing this for so long, destroying people's purchasing power without them even realizing it. And we're okay with it. So what's the problem here? We have your YouTube channel, we have mine. Is it just the media that controls everything to where they just control people's minds? I mean, we're all sheep. No one realizes what's going on behind the scenes? No one, not even behind the scenes. They're doing it right in front of people.
I mean, a lot of it's cognitive dissonance. I mean, and I'll explain that in a moment, but there are a lot of people, it's not necessarily for them to be blamed, because teaching people about economics and monetary policy, it immediately bores individuals. And
Yeah.
we've been conditioned to think that way, so that we don't really look at how things really truly are. And then the cognitive dissonance is when you see things for what it really actually is, but you don't want to incorporate that truth in your mind, and you want to
Yeah.
pretend like it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to say it, ever since Nixon took us off the gold standard, is you can hold up a dollar bill and a monopoly bill and say that the only difference in these two pieces of paper is that you think one actually has more value or value than the other, when really, in fact, reality, they're both representations of the same thing. And that's really where the world has come to now. The powers that be, the central banks, the wealthy, they want to remain wealthy, and they want to remain in control. And the best way for them to do that is to keep people dependent and poor. Henceforth, this whole debt-based system. Now, when it comes to the flip side of this, the way that the wealthy people interact, they don't interact with the system the way that we do. They're very smart about what they do, and they utilize the system. And when they realize that the money supply is getting diluted and they're losing wealth, then they go into things like gold and silver, and then the stock markets, which their fellow friend bankers are just pumping up like a balloon, like you were mentioning. Now eventually these balloons are going to pop. And also, if you look at the value of these commodities, like when it comes to the stock markets and such, they're completely overvalued because of the ballooning going on, the bailing out, the keeping the stock market inflated. And then on
Yeah.
the flip side, if they don't keep it inflated and they start raising interest rates like they're talking about doing, and start tapering back their buying backs of bonds and such, that's going to crash the system too. So it's like they're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. But the funny thing about all this is we're trusting the Federal Reserve to fix this problem that they created. And that's the biggest part, is that people don't think about this problem wouldn't have been a problem if the Federal Reserve didn't create the problem that they have to be fixing in the first place, that we have to have faith that they're going to fix when they created the problem.
Yeah.
And that part, the Federal Reserve being the problem, is what people haven't completely grasped. Now, there are people that are waking up and starting to lose faith. People call it a confidence game, because that's what this is all about, confidence. The one thing that gave the dollar its staying power after Nixon consulted the gold standard was deals with Saudi Arabia, and all oil on the United States or on the world had to be traded in denomination of the US dollar. That's what wars like in the Middle East and Iraq with Saddam Hussein was about. And I'm not pro Saddam Hussein, but he
Mm-hmm.
just didn't want US dollars for the Iraqi gold.
And then what
Then
happened right after that?
war came in with the
Boom.
guns. But
Right.
then China in 2019 launched the Petro Yuan, started selling oil for the yuan. And now most recently Russia's done it. Now America cannot go into China and Russia guns blazing like they
Mm-mm.
would Iraq.
Yeah.
So the tides are changing for the United States, as far as a world reserve currency, as far as us being the spoiled little rich kid that we didn't even realize. Even the poorest people are more well off than some people in other nations.
So, I mean, in a way, that it's a balance of power that's kind of going into effect, right? So it's shifting a little bit, right? The U.S. has been in a comfortable spot, which you and I have both benefited from, whether it's, you know, consciously or subconsciously, right? We've been living in this place, our lives are great, and all this. Now, should we be worried as American citizens who have families here and everything about the fact that, you know, the US dollar is no longer, it's losing market share, which means that we lose power as a nation. We lose power, whether it's purchasing power or anything like that. Should we be worried? Like, what's going on with that? I mean, it's definitely not a good thing, right?
No, it's not a good thing, but it's not really anything that we can do to really change it. So before Trump was president, there was a really big push with the BRIC nations banks, which is Russia, Brazil, India, China, and then some Middle Eastern nations that were trying to create an alternate banking system.
Hmm.
Now, which we see obviously is somewhat needed when you look at what's happened with Russia and Ukraine, and Russia being cut off from the majority of the SWIFT system. So they've kind of created their own alternatives with that. There was a big push for de-dollarization, for putting the dollars back into the United States, which would cause that really crazier, higher forms of inflation that could go into hyperinflation.
Yeah.
There's a big difference from inflation to high inflation to hyperinflation. When you have hyperinflation, that's when it just gets really bad really quick, and it continues to do so, and it doesn't really get better. And most recently, Venezuela is good examples of that. And that's where you might go to bed with your loaf of bread costing $2. You wake up the next day, it's $3. You wake up the very next day after that, and maybe it's $3.75. Maybe you wake up the next day and it's up to $4.50, closer to $5. Things are going up very quick because
Yeah.
those dollars are losing purchasing power. And to give an example of that, if you go on my YouTube channel from Bitcoin 21, so it would have been about 10 months ago, you can look for a video that I have. It's a short video, and it talks about I cannot remember the title of the video. I'll send you a link so you can put it in a video description.
Yeah.
But they had this big, huge dumpster set up outside in the middle of the conference of Bitcoin 21, not 22. And inside the dumpster was a lot of Venezuelan $50 Bolivar notes. Each one of these $50 Bolivar notes, which would have been equivalent to our $50 bill, was worth fractions of a penny.
Wow.
And they were blowing around like trash because they were in a trash. And I kept seeing all this money laying around, and I thought somebody had dropped it. Then I realized this money is just flying around everywhere. And I found the source of where it was flying from, and it was this big, huge dumpster full of nothing but $50 Bolivars. And it had to have been like at one point in Venezuelan money worth like over $100,000. But the equivalency of the entire dumpster was worth less than $20 to $25. And it had such little value that the homeless people in Miami didn't even want it.
Yeah. That is crazy. That's
And it's
nuts.
money that could technically be spent, but you just need a lot of it, because literally a whole dumpster, and I'm talking like a big dumpster, like when they're renovating a home or they're doing
Wow. Yeah.
construction, and they got one of those big, huge dumpsters. They're about the same size of a back of a trailer, like for a tractor trailer.
Mhm.
So it was a huge dumpster, and it was making a statement. It was one of the most bold statements I had ever seen. It gave me goosebumps because it was just like, wow, this is like priceless as far as saying the power of what something like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, decentralized cryptocurrencies, can offer the people versus what the central banks have done to people. And the problem earlier that I meant to mention also with our government, and I'm not anti-government. I mean, I'm not anti-America. I'm anti-big government. Yeah, we definitely need some form of governance because people aren't ready to treat people how they want to be treated. So we're
Yeah.
not quite there. So we need small, limited government, more local. So it's bottom up, not
Mhm.
top down.
Right.
And the problem that took place in our nation specifically was federal government takeover, basically, because our
Mm.
government was not ran by the federal government previous to the Civil War. And when we had the restoration of our nation, there was no restoration. It was just a federal takeover. And if you go back and look at the history of our founding fathers, there was a big argument for the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist. Thomas Jefferson was an Anti-Federalist, did not want a strong central government, did not want the federal government to be in the capacity of control that they are today. And that's kind of the problem.
Hmm.
As
That's
America stopped being a government of the people, for the people, by the people, and it got taken over by the federal government.
that's crazy. That's interesting.
It's
That's
like
a lot.
we're not allowed to even like choose our, like, we're only giving candidates to particularly vote from. We don't get to like choose who we want to run for president. They
Yeah.
give us who they think. They give us two candidates at the end of the day. So choose between one of these two.
Oh, that's crazy. That's a good, but that brings us to a good point. This is where things like Bitcoin are out in the spotlight. That light at the end of the tunnel that allows people to at least opt out. If you think about it, if you hold a bolivares or something from Venezuela or any other currency around the world, each currency has its own purchasing power compared to the dollar, right? And that means that, someone earning money in Mexico can't afford what someone's making here in the US, right? And so by having Bitcoin that as a standard, anyone that holds Bitcoin anywhere, you got the same purchasing power, period. Because one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. And the nice thing is that you can transfer it anywhere you want, peer to peer, with no one telling you what to do. No central government, and I know I'm being really basic here, but a lot of people that watch our channel, we're trying to introduce them to this, right? So we have this
Yeah.
big problem right now that's happening with monetary policy and Bitcoin is actually offering that solution, right? The fact that it offers features like no one can tamper with it. There's only 21 million ever, meaning a government or a central bank that is, owned by a couple people, they can't make a decision. Go ahead.
A really good example is Ukraine, because
Mhm.
a lot of the banking in Ukraine has been cut off uh, between Russian sources and such, and people aren't able to use traditional elements to be able to
Yeah.
send funds to people. And people are able to leave Ukraine and go to other nations, and as long as they're custodying their crypto, they can immediately transfer that into whatever denomination they need to wherever they're at. Whereas we've seen in other nations where there's been confiscations of fiat, of confiscations of gold, even in the United States. A lot of people don't know this. Back in the 1930s, I think it was 1933 specifically, but there was an act that took place that was basically requiring all citizens to sell their gold back to the United States government. They were not allowed to own gold up until like 1973 or 1974.
Craziest
Not even
thing ever.
allowed. It was illegal for a US citizen to own gold. So yeah, I mean the power of not only being able to maintain. Now, the problem with Bitcoin, I mean, obviously it's still a newer asset. It's very young. So it still has a lot of volatility. So it's
Mhm.
not always the best answer for someone to maintain their purchasing power.
Right.
But it is a way of maintaining non-confiscation. When you look at things like what's taken place in Canada with the Freedom Convoy, and then
Yeah.
wanting to freeze people's accounts,
That was crazy.
and or even try to do that with centralized exchanges or centralized wallets, when those companies could, because of the centralization. So it then in fact showed the power of decentralization. Stable coins, though, obviously could give people that help them with something to that effect. But the power of what Bitcoin is offering in the future, and even presently, is definitely a very powerful thing. And when you can take the power back and put it in the hands of the individual, the people, that's the most important thing I think you can do with these kind of technologies. And that's not what the dollar or any other currency now in the physical form. Yeah, cash is probably right now cash is king. It's the most private coin you can use.
Yeah, that's
When
true.
it, so
Hmm.
that's kind of my two satoshis on that.
No, that's good stuff, dude. I mean, this is a lot of information that a lot of people in my audience have never heard about. And that, I mean, that's just all interesting because it just talks about how centralized our current system is and just the opportunity that Bitcoin brings and decentralization, right? A lot of people don't realize the importance of that, and I think we're gonna see that more and more as we continue to see, you know, government control go crazy. I mean, it's
Well,
just
CBDCs,
exactly.
that's going to be a big one. Programmable money. Because what we talked about with Canada, with the Freedom Convoy, with them freezing people's bank accounts, they had to get basically approval from Parliament to be able to enact this.
Yeah.
Now, in a situation where you have programmable money that can be completely tracked and traced,
Wow.
that's going to put the situation in a completely different element. And then you can combine like the ideas of the social credit score system and things to that effect, and you can kind of put two and two together. Then you got to also remember they're trying to push for a digital ID. So then
Yeah.
you just killed all forms of privacy.
That's crazy. I
But
hope we don't get to that point. I don't see how we are not, since the government and the people at power, have control over all that. But and they can vote it. The congressmen, most of them are going to be okay with that. And so,
well, the World Economic Forum, a lot of people need to pay a lot of attention to that. Now, I know you wanted to keep this kind of short, so what I will say is, like, for future episodes, if you want to do something where we're talking and focusing on a certain area, that's awesome. But sometimes I get really passionate about this stuff because people
yeah.
really just need to wake up and kind of face reality for what it is.
Hmm.
It's the best way to deal with the problem is head on, and the best
Yep.
way to deal with the problem is knowing what the problem is. So I
Hmm.
try to help do that, and where I can't, I try to bring on guests that can help. So that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. And I definitely have a lot of knowledge inside of my head, and I would love to share it with younger people. I'll be 47 the end of this month, so as much knowledge as I feel like I can pass on, not like I'm going to be dying tomorrow, but I want to pass on my knowledge to younger individuals, because the more younger people that know this kind of information, the more that they can teach it to other people. And the
Right.
more people that know, knowing is half the battle. And we can get to this real true idea that when enough people take a stand, nothing can stand against the people, and we can truly peacefully change the world. But we have to stand united in order to do that.
Hmm. No, that's a good point. And like you said, we're using all these channels. So guys, like he's saying, a lot of information is going to be put out there, and his channel's out here, RiceTVx. All it takes is 30 minutes of your time. I mean, some of these episodes are an hour. You can handle that, right?
Some of them are longer than that, but yeah, I mean, but it's worth it. I mean, and the ones that are longer is for a reason. So, I mean, and a lot of times I like to think that these conversations are captivating enough that you would want to invest the time. Now, the awesome function that YouTube also offers is that you can speed up time on videos.
Yeah,
So
that's a
so if
good
you're one
point.
of those people who can listen to something a little bit faster, because I can definitely talk fast, but if I keep talking like this, people will be like, "Well, can you just please slow it down just a little bit?"
Yeah. No,
So
it's all good. Trust me. I know. That's how I feel sometimes. I feel like some people lose interest, but it's ultimately, if you make a difference in one person, two people, it just carries on, and it's a chain of events that it helps someone out there. So that's a win. So that's the way I see it. So we'll wrap it up in a little bit. I wish we could continue on. Maybe I'll have you on later on.
yeah, I'm open, man. Just let me know.
Yeah. So what's your 2 cents? What is going on with Elon Musk taking over Twitter? I mean, he's trying to do that in the hopes, and I don't know what your opinion is on Elon Musk, but what do you think about that?
Okay, so one of the things that I like about this is the fact that he's at least bringing attention to the fact that we need to have free speech. That free speech is important to a good functioning democracy,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes down to it. Because, and it's also showing how much some individuals don't want to allow for that free speech on that particular platform. It's as if Twitter has become the town hall. And
Yeah.
I've looked into situations where people have sued YouTube, and Twitter would fall under the same category. And there's been precedents set. That doesn't mean it's a be all end all, but as of now, companies like Twitter, Google, YouTube, and I know YouTube is owned by Google under Alphabet. They're all private companies, and they've been ruled as they're not bound by the First Amendment. So they're not required to even offer free speech. So it is good that Elon would want that. Now, one person doesn't need to own a platform like that. That's too much power, even for a rich guy like Elon. And I'm not even really sure what to think about Elon. He's got a really interesting past. Like, I don't really even think he started SpaceX or Tesla. I just think he kind of took them over and acted like he did.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean that he's not an intelligent guy and that there's not a method behind his madness. I
Right.
definitely feel like he's bucking the system. Um, he's done some things somewhat similar when he was talking about taking uh, Tesla private at
Mm-hmm.
$420 a share.
Yeah.
He's been bucking the SEC for quite some time. I think this is more of a power move, more of him flexing, because I think people are saying, for one, even though it's higher than the valuation of the stock prices, it's still kind of undervalued for what Twitter is. So other people, I think, would be offering more. I think Justin Sun from Tron has come out offering more per share.
Yeah.
Um, why a company like Facebook, who bought Instagram, wouldn't want to get in the fight. And then when you're dealing with a board of directors who have a lot of money combined, they could have more money than the one single wealthiest man on the planet, and he can't take all of his wealth and put it into Twitter. So I'm not really quite sure exactly what he's doing, but
Yeah.
I do like the attention he's bringing to free speech, which definitely needs to have more light, because there's been so much censorship that we've been dealing with heavily over the past 2 years. And people like Bitcoin Ben, he's had like his channel terminated 4 or 5 times. I've had videos taken off constantly. Finally, they've taken out one of my channels, my backup channel. And it's just getting ridiculous not being able to have a voice, and to say that, because I've gotten in trouble for things that by YouTube standards that at the time says was wrong, that a year later or so comes out to be truthful, and it's all right to talk about,
That's
but there's
ridiculous.
nothing to go back on to fix the situation where they took down my videos and gave me strikes because of something that they deemed inappropriate that was ended up showing to be truthful. So we definitely need to support platforms that are offering free speech and that are trying to maintain those values, because we're going to start losing them more and more and more. And the more that we support the platforms that are taking away our voices, the more our voice is just going to be taken away.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, when we need something created that's decentralized, just like a decentralized Bitcoin. I think Theta actually does. I don't know how much you know about Theta, but
Yeah, but the problem, and I love these platforms. The big problem is like being stuck in an echo chamber. You don't have the masses going over
yeah,
to
you
these
don't have the
platforms.
audience.
So you're like, especially crypto, you're just stuck in a crypto echo chamber specifically because you're just talking to people who are already into crypto. You're not really reaching new people per
New
se.
people. Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Well,
I'm always the devil's advocate on a lot of things, man. So I try to think outside the box and be as much of a realist as I can. Getting a little bit older has done that to me.
yeah. No, these are all good points, man. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. So, I wish we had more time to talk. We'll have you on again. But so what I do on every episode is I do just to finish it off some rapid fire questions or statements that I make, and you have to respond with the first word and only one word that comes up to your mind. All
Okay.
right. So I'm gonna say whatever. You gotta respond with one word. Um, let's start with Bitcoin.
Ben.
That's awesome. A lot of people usually say gold or freedom.
Yeah, I just,
Bitcoin bad.
Ben came off of Bitcoin real
Hey,
quick.
that's the whole point of this. First word that comes up in your mind. Let's see. Gold.
Standard.
Government.
Sucks.
You're turning them into like sentences.
I'm not trying to.
That's pretty good though. I've never seen this. Let's see.
That's might be how my brain works. Maybe somebody can psychologically evaluate me and tell me what's wrong.
How about anarchy?
Love.
Federal Reserve.
Evil.
All right, last one. Peter Schiff.
Not so bad.
Not so bad. Yeah,
He makes a lot of valid points. It's just
he does.
I wish that he would recognize the value of Bitcoin in addition to the value of what gold offers. And he's not even really a big silver guy.
Hmm.
He's more of a gold dude. But I think that there's a time and a place and a need for both.
Cool. Yeah, no, I agree. But all right, guys. Well, thank you for watching the show. We got RiceTVx. Follow him on his YouTube channel. I don't have his Twitter pulled up, but
It's at
what's your
Rice
Twitter
TV.
handle?
It's pretty much everywhere at RiceTVx.
Okay. All right, cool, man. Well, we'll have you on again, and thanks for coming on the show, man.